First day parawing is done, and let's review a little bit of what the experience was like, some of the decisions that I made, and what came of it. So, first things first, let's talk about gear. I am 86 kilos, and the largest board I have is a 90 liter, 6'6" by 18 inches. I have a 75 centimeter mast from AFS, as well as the Silk 1050 as my largest foil. So that is what I grabbed. I grabbed my biggest board and I grabbed my biggest foil and then the 2.3 meter Ka'a. Now, when I went out, I decided that I wanted to try to ease into this. I didn't want to just immediately go out and get hammered on because I wanted to have a better understanding of how the parawing worked before I was trying to have amazing success with it. So I flew it in the park for, I don't know, 2 minutes and just kind of felt it out a little bit. Seemed a little weird, but the wind is pretty dirty in the park with the trees and whatnot. But I tried to at least figure out, okay, if you backstall it, if you pull the bottom of the handle towards you, it collapses, and then that's how I would retract it. I figured that out in the park. And then other than that, I just tried to feel the basic movement of flying it around. All of that was pretty simple. So then I packed up, headed to the river. And when I got to the river, I decided that the first place that I got to was only 20 knots. Now, when I bought this parawing, I asked Gwen specifically at Wing Foil Pro Center what wind speeds, and he said for the 2.3 you should really aim for 30 knots if you want to be successful with that thing. It was 20 knots. It was not windy enough, but I wanted to go out and I wanted to know, okay, if there's not enough wind, what happens? Is it a total nightmare? Is it misery? Are you going to be like crying for help? What happens? So I took the 2.3 with the 90 liter board, 1050 foil, out in 20 knots, and this is what it looked like. This one right here. So this session is about 30 minutes, and all I did is I just went out and I practiced flying the parawing while being on the board. I practiced standing up. I discovered a few different things that I thought were really important and really valuable just doing this. So to kind of cover some of those things, what are the most important things I walked away with on that first 30-minute session? First off, even though the 2.3 didn't have enough grunt to pull my completely zero experience parawinging person out of the water up onto foil, when you're in the water and that thing if it's powered and it jerks, you can feel it, and it just ripped right out of my hand right when I got in the water. So I'd seen other people getting into the water while flying their parawing, and I just mimicked them, and I was like, okay, I'll be flying it on shore, and then I'll walk into the water with my board and all that, and it ripped out of my hand really fast. I was super surprised, and I was like, okay, so there is a lot of power in here, especially when you're in the water, when your body is submerged in the water, and the river is pulling you this way, but the wind is pulling you this way. Here we have opposition, so you get this amplified force. So that was a good immediate lesson for me to learn. Next, I had to start learning how to get on and off the board while trying to manage the parawing. And at first, it feels like an absolute nightmare. There's too much power in even the 2.3 meter Ka'a. But if you backstall it and make the 2.3 just lay down onto the water, the great thing is it relaunches really well. So you can backstall it, set it on the water, crawl onto your board, and then relaunch it, and you're fine. It's very easy to do, and with the short lines and the small canopy, I wasn't having problems with tangles, and I wasn't having problems with any kind of canopy getting super flooded when I was in the middle of the water. Once I was once I had it up in flight, I started to learn, if you pull the top of the bar towards you, the little nub, if you pull that towards you, that really pulls on the leading edge lines, and it brings um, the parawing up to 12 o'clock. And when it's sitting at 12 o'clock directly overhead, you can, kind of lean forward on your board, do a stink bug start, whatever. And it's actually quite supportive of you at that point. You get a lot of balance out of that, even on an 18-inch wide board. It's good. And then once you get your knees up on the board and then you sit up out of kind of that stink bug position, then you immediately turn the bar back to a more powered position, and then you can start to fly yourself around, steer a little bit. Now, I did find that I couldn't get up in that light of wind, but I could slog really, really, really well, which I found to be super valuable. If I was, even if I was out winging in the ocean and I wanted a backup, knowing that even a really small parawing could be deployed and could tow me back to shore. You can just lay on the board and get towed back to shore. That's really cool for me to know. So I like it from a self-rescue standpoint. It's actually a really cool tool, and I think it should be, or I think it could be considered a good safety tool to have out there if you're a winger who's going way far out to sea and want extra reassurances that you're going to get back home. So after my first little 30-minute session where I just kind of sorted things out, I went for a wing, came back in, and then I packed up and went to a different location that had more wind. So this is what my second session looked like. This session is about 2 hours long, and a lot more happened in this session. So right here, we get to see the wind speed. When I first got this box is the duration of when I was in the water. So when I first got in, it was, roughly, maybe 23 knot average through here, 24 probably. And this zone here, now mind you, there's a lot of swell at this point. So the first place, it was basically flat water, very friendly. This though, a lot of swell, probably waist to chest high, and it was very frustrating being on the 18-inch board. I can't say enough that while the 18-inch board is super efficient and very easy to get up, and I had no problems when it was in flatter water, when it was in big swell, it was actually very frustrating. I had a really hard time. And I have always been very naturally had really good balance, whether it was when I learned how to downwind subfoil, no problem. I didn't find myself like freaking out about falling off a billion times. When I first got a mid-length that was 20 inches wide, I didn't have problems falling off. When I got this board at 18 inches and I was winging it, again, no problems falling off. So for me, it was a shocker to then with the parawing find out that 18 inches was devastatingly difficult to stand up on in the swell, in the really big swell. This makes sense though. At 24 knot averages, we're in a situation where there's not a lot to lean back on. With a wing, it's a very dynamic tool. It's very direct, and you can correct your balance really quickly with the wing, just pulling in and out. Parawing, not so much. The 2.3 meter parawing, even when there's plenty of wind, I didn't feel like this was easy to balance. So this is kind of the zone where I cursed the world and thought maybe I bought the wrong thing and this wasn't going to work out. But if you remember, when I bought this parawing, Gwen told me, hey, 30 knots. You're going to need 30 knots. And sure enough, this first hour or so in the water, I was, just trying to figure things out. And then I started getting these 30 knot gusts. And what do you know? I came right up on the foil. And let me tell you, I came up on the foil and I went across the river. And then I thought about, that motion to depower the wing, not depower it, but to backsaw it and collapse it. So pull the bottom of the bar, the wing collapses down right into my hand, pull the lines until it's bundled up, and I just went straight into a swell ride. And it's been a long time since I paddled downwind and had that completely free experience. But oh my goodness, it was so good. And being on a little board, being on a medium aspect ratio foil that surfs really well, I had a lot of struggle getting my balance and trying to get on foil that very first time. But the first flight, first collapse, I like tucked the parawing away really quickly and easily because it's so small. And then I was just going downwind, and I wanted to just go. I didn't want to stop, but I didn't have a shuttle, and I was like, I got to get back to shore. So I only went downwind for a couple turns, but I have to say, the feeling of freedom is very, very real, and having that on such a small board was super exciting. Um, so that first parawing flight was definitely intoxicating. Um, I really enjoyed it. So I pulled the parawing back out, didn't continue downwind, relaunched it. I threw it out, and it just immediately relaunched. And I shouldn't say I threw it out. I think it was, I'm not sure whose video it was in. They said don't throw it, drop it. Just drop it. And I did. I just dropped it, and it relaunched perfectly. No big deal. And then I tried to go back upwind a little bit. It went upwind okay. It wasn't anything phenomenal for upwind performance, but it did go upwind. Uh, it was not friendly for doing foot switches or jibes. I found that it was much better to actually collapse it and retract it, then jibe, and then relaunch it. Obviously, if you work on your parawinging skills, you'll be able to jibe and tack and do flips and whatever else you might possibly want to do with a parawing. But for me, on my very first flight, I found that to be difficult. And then normally when you're riding toe side with the wing and you kind of twist it up, if you know what I'm talking about, it felt especially weird with the parawing. So I tried to let go with one hand to just have a more open experience and just have one hand reaching back with the parawing. And it ripped out of my hand really quickly. I think I just got it too far downwind, straight into the meat of the wind zone, and a 30 knot gust hitting that thing. It was just gone. I was actually probably a little lucky that I didn't hurt my shoulder because it jerks really hard when it's in the power zone, kind of that wind window. If you were a kiter, it will jerk extremely hard, and that sucks. You have to be aware of that and don't let yourself get hurt. But it ripped out of my hand, so I just turned downwind, followed it until it landed in the water, and then I hopped off my board and grabbed it. So that was kind of the majority of that first session. The only other thing that I want to say about my first session on it, and a tip for other people, is take everything off of your harness. Any little hook for your harness or anything like that. If you wear a vest or an impact vest, make sure there's nothing for the lines to get caught on, because those lines do seem to snag on absolutely everything. And then disappointingly, like I thought, oh, I'll just slide my harness hook way off to the side, and I started my session that way. But as you're like going through the motions, my hook managed to get back in the middle, and I didn't really notice it. And then since you're climbing on your board, you're holding a parawing up here, and you're trying to climb on and off your board. I ended up scraping up my deck pad with my harness hook. So I would say when you're first learning, don't even worry about hooking in to go upwind. When I grabbed both hands on that little bar and pulled the D power towards that top nub a little bit, I never felt overpowered with both hands on. I felt completely in control in 30 knots with almost no effort to maintain what was going on. So I'd say, strip everything off your harness. Don't damage your board, and get out there and have some fun. So yeah, is there anything else that I wanted to add? It was super fun. I can't say enough. Like that first flight was really good. I was like, oh, this is actually really, really good. Um, and then, I'll also say that even in the strong winds, managing it felt really brutal. It really beat me up. But I did like that untangling it, or when it would crash in the water and I would have to relaunch it, even in the strong winds and even with huge swell. Those short lines, the short retract length and the small canopy, never cost me more than a minute or two of just like trying to flip the water out and relaunch it. So I think the small sizes are very, very user friendly. Yeah, so that's day one. Had a blast, learned a lot, got beat up. If you have any questions, feel free to ask, and I'll report back after day two. All right, see you at the river.